The last time I heard my son's voice, he was laughing about burnt toast. 7 days later, I stood in his kitchen staring at a floor that reeked of bleach, and I knew not suspected, but knew that laugh was gone from this world. Hello, my name is Helen Carter. I'm 63 years old, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. For 26 years, I wore a badge for the Phoenix Police Department. I worked robbery, then homicide, then cold cases until my knees and my heart both gave out around the same time. That was 5 years ago. My husband Jack passed 8 years before that. Cancer. Since then, it had been just me and my boy. Well, it was just me and my boy. I need to tell you what happened. Not for sympathy, not for closure, there's no such thing. But because someone needs to hear it. And maybe, somewhere, it'll matter. I raised my son David in a small house near 27th Avenue and Camelback. He was a quiet kid. Smart. The kind who did his homework without being asked and called me every evening even after he moved out. When he got his law degree from Arizona State, I cried. Not because I'm emotional, I'm not, but because his father would have been so proud. David joined Harding and Associates downtown. Corporate law. Good money. Steady work. He married a woman named Carmen 3 years ago. I liked her well enough. She was sharp, organized, maybe a little distant, but I figured that was just her way. David called me every evening at 6:30. Like clockwork. We'd talk for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing deep. Just connection. How was work? How was I feeling? What did I have for dinner? Small things that mattered. Then one Tuesday, the phone didn't ring. I waited until 7, then 8. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I told myself he was busy. Court ran late. Phone died. Battery issues. The usual explanations you tell yourself when your gut says otherwise. Wednesday. No call. I left 2 messages. Thursday. 3 messages. I called Carmen's cell. It rang and rang. No answer. By Friday morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to his office. The receptionist, a polite young woman named Priya, looked confused when I asked for him. Mr. Carter hasn't been in all week, she said. We assumed he was sick. I felt something cold slide down my spine. Did he call in? She checked her computer, frowning. No, Ms. Reyes, his wife, she called Monday morning. Said he had the flu. The cold feeling spread through my chest. David never missed work. And he would have called me if he was sick. Always did. I drove straight to their house in Tempe. It was a nice place. 2-story corner lot with desert landscaping. Barrel cactus and Palo Verde trees. David's black Camry sat in the driveway. Carmen's silver Honda was gone. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. Knocked hard. Silence. I pulled out my key, the spare David had given me 2 Christmases ago, just in case. It didn't work. The lock had been changed. I stood there on that porch for a long moment. The May sun was brutal. My hands were shaking. Not from the heat. The neighbor came out. Mr. Eugene Park. Retired postal worker. I'd met him once at David's 4th of July barbecue last year. Mrs. Carter? Have you seen my son this week? He looked uncomfortable. Shifted his weight. Not since last Tuesday. But what? Last Tuesday night. Late. Maybe 11 o'clock. I heard shouting. From their place. A man and a woman. Loud. Then glass breaking. Shattering. I almost called the police, but it stopped suddenly. My throat tightened. What kind of shouting? The bad kind. Angry at first. Then scared. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone. He trailed off. I saw Ms. Reyes leave around 2 in the morning. She was dragging something. A suitcase, maybe. Big one. She looked wrong. Frantic. Did you see David? No. Just her. I pulled out my phone. Called a locksmith. Told him I was locked out of my son's house and needed emergency service. Which was true, in a way. He said he'd be there in an hour. Mr. Park went back inside. I waited on that porch. Watching the street. Thinking about that broken glass. That 2 a.m. departure. The locksmith arrived. Young guy. Asked to see ID to verify the address. I showed him my license with David's last name. He didn't ask more questions. Just drilled out the lock and installed a new one. The door swung open. The smell hit me first. Bleach. Industrial strength. So strong it burned my nose and made my eyes water. The living room looked like a storm had torn through it. The coffee table was cracked down the middle. A lamp lay shattered against the wall. The cream-colored area rug had a huge wet patch in the center, still damp, reeking of chemicals. I knelt down, ran my fingers across the fibers. Someone had scrubbed this hard. Recently. The brush marks were still visible. In the kitchen, the trash can overflowed with paper towels and empty bottles. Bleach bottles. 4 of them. The sink was spotless. Too spotless. The grout between the tiles was lighter in some spots, freshly scrubbed. I moved through the house methodically. Old training kicking in. Bedroom. Closet. Bathroom. Everything showed signs of aggressive cleaning. The kind you do when you're trying to erase something. I found his wedding ring under the edge of the couch. Gold band. Engraved with their wedding date. It had a dark brownish stain on the inside. I knew what that stain was. I'd seen it 100 times in my career. Blood. I pulled out my phone. Called 911. Told them my son was missing and I'd found evidence of violence at his residence. They sent 2 patrol officers. Both young. Maybe mid-20s. Rookies. "Ma'am, there's no body," one of them said. He had kind eyes but no imagination. Maybe they had a fight. Maybe he left to cool off. His car is in the driveway. His ring is under the couch. This floor was scrubbed with industrial bleach in the middle of the night. People clean their houses. Not like this. Not at 2 in the morning. The other officer looked at me with something close to pity. "We'll file a missing persons report. But honestly, ma'am, this looks like a domestic situation. He'll probably turn up in a day or 2. Most of them do. I was a homicide detective for 12 years. This is not a domestic spat." They exchanged glances. The look that says emotional family member, not reliable. "We'll make a report," the first one repeated. "Someone will follow up." They left. I stayed. I sat on David's couch as the sun went down. I didn't turn on the lights. Just sat there in the dark, in that chemical smell, holding his wedding ring in my palm. I'm a mother. I'm also a cop. And every instinct I had, every hour I'd spent studying blood spatter patterns and crime scenes staged to look like accidents, all of it was screaming the same thing. My son didn't leave. My son didn't run away to clear his head. My son was dead. And his wife knew exactly why. I drove home that night through streets I'd patrolled for decades. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and started writing everything down. Every detail, every inconsistency, the changed locks, the bleach, the 2 a.m. departure, the neighbor's testimony about shouting and breaking glass, the ring with blood on it. The police weren't going to help. Not yet. Not until they had a body. Not until they took this seriously. So I would have to find the truth myself. The missing persons report sat in a stack somewhere at the station. I knew exactly how it worked. Low priority, adult male, possible marital dispute, no body, no signs of forced entry. They'd wait for a credit card transaction, a cell phone ping, an ATM withdrawal. They'd wait for him to show up at his office on Monday with an embarrassed explanation. I couldn't wait. Saturday morning, I started calling David's friends. His college roommate Matt hadn't heard from him in a month. His gym buddy Eric said David had missed their Thursday morning workout. No text. No explanation. I called David's office again. Left a message for his boss. Called his assistant Priya at home. Mrs. Carter? Any news? Nothing yet. Priya, I need to ask you something. Did David seem worried lately? Stressed more than usual? She hesitated. He's always busy. But, yeah, the last couple weeks, he was different. Distracted. He kept asking me to pull financial records. Personal banking stuff. His wife's accounts. Did he say why? No, but he looked scared. I asked if everything was okay. He said he was handling something. That he'd tell me when it was over. My hands tightened on the phone. Did he mention Carmen? Any problems at home? Not directly, but he seemed, I don't know, sad. Like he was carrying something heavy. Thank you, Priya. I hung up. Made more calls. By Sunday evening, I'd compiled a list. 23 things that didn't add up. The changed locks meant premeditation. The industrial cleaning meant covering evidence. Carmen's midnight departure with luggage meant flight. David's car still in the driveway but his laptop missing. His phone turned off. His entire routine shattered overnight. I called the detective assigned to the case. James Morrison. His father and I had worked together years ago. Good cop. Solid instincts. Jimmy was younger. Less experienced. More impatient. Mrs. Carter, I understand you're concerned. I'm not concerned. I'm telling you there's evidence of foul play at my son's residence. We have officers checking hospitals, hotels, his credit cards. These things take time. There was blood on his wedding ring. A pause. You said it was a dark stain. Could have been anything. Detective Morrison, I know blood when I see it. With respect, ma'am, you've been retired 5 years. And you're emotionally involved. That can cloud judgment. Heat rose in my chest. I worked homicide for 12 years. I know the difference between dirt and dried blood. I know what industrial bleach smells like when someone's trying to hide something. And I know that ring didn't end up under the couch by accident. I'm not dismissing your concerns. But right now, we have a missing person case. Not a homicide. Then let me back in that house. Let me look again properly. Mrs. Carter, You owe me that much, detective. He sighed, long and tired. I'll see what I can do. He called back Monday afternoon. You can access the residence tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. I'll meet you there personally. Thank you. 1 hour. That's all I can give you. And I stay with you the entire time. Understood. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything I knew. Every case I'd worked where the scene was staged. Every time someone had tried to make a murder look like something else. Tuesday morning came. Overcast sky. Rare for Phoenix in May. I arrived at 8:50. Morrison pulled up at 8:55. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. 1 hour, he said again. Let's make it count. We went inside. The smell had faded somewhat. The wet patch on the rug was dry now. Stiff. I knelt beside it, ran my hand across the fibers. This was scrubbed multiple times. You can see the brush marks. Someone used serious elbow grease here. Morrison crouched down beside me. Studied it. Said nothing. I moved through the house slowly. Methodically. The way I'd been trained. In the kitchen, the trash had been emptied, but I checked under the sink. Found another bleach bottle pushed way in the back behind the cleaning supplies. Half empty. Carmen doesn't clean, I said. She hired a service. Comes every other Thursday. I know because David complained about the cost. How do you know she doesn't clean? Because I'm a mother. I pay attention. In the bedroom, the sheets were fresh. Too fresh. Hospital corners. The hamper was empty. The bathroom showed the same excessive cleaning pattern. Grout scrubbed raw. Drain covers spotless. No hair. No soap scum. Nothing. Someone went through this place like they were erasing DNA evidence, I said. Morrison's jaw tightened. He was starting to see it. Let's check the backyard. The yard was small. Desert landscaping. Gravel. Native plants. A concrete patio with 2 chairs and a small table. I walked the perimeter slowly. Looked at the ground. The gravel near the back gate was scattered unevenly. Disturbed. I knelt down. Brushed some aside. Here, look at this. Morrison came over. There were faint drag marks in the dirt beneath the gravel. Something heavy had been pulled toward the gate. The marks were maybe 3 feet long. Partially covered. But there. We need luminol, I said quietly. Mrs. Carter, you see those marks. You smell that house. You know I'm right, detective. He stared at me for a long moment. Then pulled out his phone. I'll call the crime scene unit. The CSI team arrived with their equipment. Lights. Cameras. Chemical sprayers. I stood in the driveway while they worked. It took 2 hours. Morrison came out just after noon. His face told me everything before he opened his mouth. We found blood. Significant amount. Under the rug. Splatter pattern on the baseboard behind where the couch sits. Small droplets on the wall. The patio concrete showed positive luminol reaction too. Heavy concentration. Someone tried to clean it, but luminol doesn't lie. My knees went weak. I sat down hard on the curb. Put my head between my hands. We're sending samples for DNA analysis. Results should be back in 48 hours. But Mrs. Carter. He sat down beside me. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you sooner. How much blood? Enough that someone didn't just get a nosebleed. We're talking serious injury, potentially fatal. I nodded. I'd already known. But hearing it confirmed was different. One truth lives in your mind. Another lives in your body. I'm issuing a warrant for Carmen Reyes. All her bank accounts are being frozen. We're putting out alerts at airports, bus stations, border crossings, rental car agencies. Highway Patrol is circulating her photo and vehicle description. We'll find her. She's been gone 6 days. She could be anywhere by now. Then we'll search everywhere. I stood up, brushed dirt off my jeans. I want updates. Every step, every development. Helen, don't patronize me. That's my son's blood in there. I spent half my life putting killers away. I'm not sitting home while you look for his murderer. He nodded slowly. I'll keep you informed. I promise. I drove home through the city I'd served for 26 years. Past the precinct where I'd started as a rookie. Past the courthouse where I'd testified in dozens of trials. Past the cemetery where Jack was buried under a simple headstone. I didn't go inside my house right away. Just sat in the car in the driveway. Engine off. Staring at nothing. I thought about David as a little boy. 6 years old. Missing his 2 front teeth. Bringing me dandelions from the yard like they were roses. Telling me they were for the best mom in the world. I thought about his high school graduation. How proud Jack had been. How David had hugged us both and promised to make us proud. I thought about his wedding day 3 years ago. How handsome he'd looked in that tuxedo. How Carmen had smiled at him during their vows like he was everything. I thought about the last conversation we'd had. Thursday evening, 6 days before he vanished. Mom, can I ask you something? Always, sweetheart. If someone you loved did something wrong, something illegal, would you turn them in? I'd laughed at the time. Thought he was asking about a case at work. Some ethical hypothetical. Depends on what they did. I'm serious, Mom. So am I. Love doesn't mean protecting people from consequences. Sometimes it means making sure they face them. That's how people learn. That's how they get better. He'd been quiet for a moment. Then, yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. Everything okay, sweetheart? Yeah, just thinking about a case. Ethical stuff. I love you, Mom. I love you too, David. I sat in that car. In my driveway. In the afternoon heat. And I realized. He hadn't been asking about a case. He'd been asking about Carmen. He'd discovered what she was doing. Whatever it was. And he'd been trying to figure out what to do about it. And she killed him for it. My phone rang around 6 that evening. Morrison. DNA results came back fast-tracked. It's David's blood. No question. We're officially reclassifying this as a homicide investigation. Carmen Reyes's vehicle was spotted on I-10 heading east toward New Mexico yesterday afternoon. State police are coordinating with us. Thank you for calling. Helen, I know this isn't the news you wanted. Yes, it is. I wanted the truth. Now I have it. I hung up, walked into my empty house, sat at the kitchen table. The same table where David had done his homework every night. Where we'd eaten 1,000 meals together. Where I'd taught him to play gin rummy and poker. I opened my laptop, created a new document, started writing everything down. Timeline, evidence, questions that needed answers, inconsistencies in Carmen's behavior, places she might run, people she might contact, resources she might use. I was a mother grieving her son. But I was also a cop hunting a killer. And I was going to find her. The call came 3 days later. Thursday morning, 7:30. I was already awake. I hadn't been sleeping properly. Maybe 2 or 3 hours a night in short bursts. We found her vehicle. Morrison's voice was tight, controlled. The tone you use when the news is worse than expected. Where? Abandoned lot outside Lordsburg, New Mexico. About 4 hours east of here. County sheriff spotted it yesterday evening. Ran the plates. It's Carmen's Honda. I was already reaching for my keys. I'm coming. Helen, you can't just. I'm coming. You can meet me there or not. Your choice. I hung up, got in my car, started driving. The desert stretched out forever on Interstate 10. Empty, brutal, nothing but sand and scrub brush and heat shimmer on the asphalt. I'd driven this highway dozens of times over my career. Chasing leads, transporting prisoners, attending conferences in Las Cruces and El Paso. Now I was chasing my son's ghost. I thought about the navy blue scarf I'd knit for David 2 Christmases ago. He'd complained that Phoenix was too hot for scarves. Teased me about it, but he'd worn it anyway the one time we drove up to Flagstaff in January. Made a joke about keeping it in his car for emergency Colorado ski trips that never materialized. I wondered if Carmen had used it. To wrap something, hide something, wipe something clean. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Morrison called when I was an hour outside Lordsburg. I'm already here, parked outside the perimeter. This is an active crime scene. I know how crime scenes work. I know you do. That's exactly why I'm telling you. The lot was behind a closed truck stop. Boarded up windows, weeds growing through cracked asphalt, rusted chain link fence sagging in places. Carmen's silver Honda Accord sat alone in the far corner. Yellow police tape already up. CSI van parked nearby. County sheriff vehicle. State police cruiser. Morrison met me at the perimeter tape. He looked exhausted. Probably hadn't slept much either. We can't let you cross the tape. Show me what you found. He hesitated, glanced back at the vehicle, then nodded. Come with me. Stay back. We walked closer. Not too close. A female tech was photographing the rear of the car. The trunk stood open. Even from 15 feet away, I could see the stains. Dark, rust brown, dried in uneven patterns across the carpet lining. Pooled in the corners, spattered on the sides. There's more, Morrison said quietly. Packaged narcotics. Crystal methamphetamine. About 2 pounds. Vacuum sealed. Professional packaging. Street value around $50,000. I felt my stomach drop. David didn't use drugs. No, but his wife was transporting them. A tech approached. The woman who'd been photographing. Late 30s. Sharp eyes. She held up a clear evidence bag. Inside was fabric. Navy blue. Wool. My scarf. Found this wedged under the spare tire, she said. It has extensive blood staining. We'll run DNA confirmation, but it's his. My voice sounded distant, hollow. I made it. Christmas 2 years ago. For my son. The tech looked uncomfortable. Glanced at Morrison. He nodded slightly. She walked away. Helen, Morrison said gently. She wrapped him in it. The words came out flat. Used it to clean up. Something I made. With my own hands. We don't know that yet. Yes, we do. He didn't argue. There's something else, Morrison continued. Gas station in Deming. About 100 miles east of here. Clerk remembers a woman matching Carmen's description. Wednesday morning. 2 days after David disappeared. She paid cash for gas. Hands were shaking badly. The clerk noticed what looked like dried blood under her fingernails. Why didn't he call it in immediately? Thought maybe she'd cut herself. Didn't want to get involved. Called us yesterday after our alert went out statewide. Where did she go after Deming? We don't know. She abandoned the car here. Could have hitched a ride. Caught a bus. Stolen another vehicle. Crossed into Mexico through a rural crossing. We're checking everything. I stared at the Honda. At the trunk with my son's blood dried inside it. At the scarf I'd made while watching television. Thinking about how to keep him warm during winters that never really came in Phoenix. She's not just running from us, I said. Morrison frowned. What do you mean? 2 pounds of meth. Vacuum sealed. Professional operation. She wasn't using. She was transporting. For someone. And if she failed to deliver that product. I looked at him. She's dead either way. Prison or a bullet. Us or them. His expression darkened. You think she was running drugs for a cartel? Or a distribution network? Someone organized. Someone who doesn't forgive losses. And 2 pounds plus whatever money she owed them? That's a death sentence. We drove back to Phoenix separately. I took my time. Stopped at a rest area outside Tucson. Sat at a concrete picnic table in the meager shade. I called Priya again. David's assistant. Mrs. Carter? Did they find him? Not yet. Priya, I need to ask you something else. You said David was pulling financial records. His wife's accounts. Did he mention debt? Money problems? She was quiet for a moment. He didn't use those words. But he asked me to track down information about investment accounts. Cryptocurrency transactions. He seemed confused. Like the numbers weren't adding up. He kept saying something didn't make sense. Did he mention amounts? No. But he looked scared, Mrs. Carter. Really scared. I asked if I should get a lawyer involved. He said no. Said he needed to handle this privately first. Thank you, Priya. I hope they find him soon. I hung up. Sat there in the heat watching 18-wheelers thunder past on the interstate. David had discovered something. Carmen was in debt. Bad debt. The kind you don't escape. And she'd turned to drug running to pay it off. Or to try. And David had found out. And he'd tried to save her. Tried to do the right thing. And it got him killed. Morrison called me Tuesday afternoon. 10 days after David vanished. We have her. I stood up from the couch so fast my vision blurred. Where? New Mexico State Police raided a house outside Albuquerque. Major drug distribution operation. Multi-agency task force. Carmen Reyes was inside. She's in custody. Relief and rage flooded through me in equal measure. Is she talking? Not yet. She requested a lawyer immediately. But Helen. He paused. We still haven't found David. I know. We need her to tell us where she left him. I know. We sat in silence. The phone line hummed between us. They're transporting her back to Phoenix tomorrow. She'll be arraigned Thursday. I thought you might want to know. I want to see her. Helen, I want to see her face. I want to be there when you question her. He sighed. I'll see what I can arrange. Thursday afternoon. Maricopa County Jail. Morrison met me outside interrogation room C. The building smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. She doesn't know you're here, he said. One-way glass. She won't be able to see you. We're going to present the evidence. Walk her through everything we have. See if she breaks. Will she? Hard to say. She's tougher than she looks. But everyone breaks eventually. We entered the observation room. Small. Dark. Air conditioning set too cold. A metal folding chair faced the window. Through the glass, I saw Carmen. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed and tangled. No makeup. Skin gray. Orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame like she'd lost weight. Her hands were cuffed to a metal ring on the table. She stared at the surface. Blank. Empty. A detective I didn't recognize entered the interrogation room. Younger than Morrison. Mid-30s maybe. Suit and tie. He sat down across from her. Opened a folder. Ms. Reyes, I'm Detective Stevens. I need to ask you some questions. She didn't look up. We found your vehicle outside Lordsburg. We found blood in the trunk. Significant amounts. We found narcotics. 2 pounds of methamphetamine. And we found this. He placed a photo on the table. The navy blue scarf. Bloodstained. Carmen's face crumpled. Just for a second. Then she pulled it back together. But I saw it. The crack in the mask. Ms. Reyes, where is David Carter? Nothing. We know you killed him. We have his blood. We have your car. We have witnesses who saw you fleeing. We have your financial records showing massive debt and payments from known drug dealers. We have everything. The only question now is where you left him. Silence. His mother deserves to bury her son. Whatever happened, however it happened, she deserves that closure. Where is he? I want my lawyer. Her voice was hoarse. Cracked. Like she'd been screaming. Stevens leaned forward. Your lawyer can't change the evidence. But you can show some humanity. Tell us where he is. Let Helen bury her son. The judge will take that into consideration at sentencing. I want my lawyer. He gathered the photos. Stood up. Looked at her with something between pity and disgust. You're going to prison for the rest of your life. You understand that, right? The only question is whether you die there completely alone, or whether you give one grieving mother some small measure of peace. Think about it. He left the room. Carmen sat there, still, staring at the table where the photo had been. Then she started crying, silent at first. Then her shoulders shook, tears streaming down her face. Mouth open in soundless sobs. I watched her through the glass. This woman who'd killed my son. This stranger I'd welcomed into my family. Who I'd called daughter. Who'd sent me birthday cards and smiled at Thanksgiving dinners and kissed David at their wedding while I cried happy tears. Morrison touched my shoulder. Helen, you don't have to watch this. Yes, I said. I do. They took her back to her cell 20 minutes later. Morrison walked me out. She'll break, he said. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But she will. The guilt will eat at her. I stood in the parking lot. Mid-afternoon sun beating down. Heat radiating off the asphalt in waves. I need to know where he is, I said. My voice shook. I can't leave him out there alone. In the desert. I can't. We'll find him. I give you my word. I got in my car. Drove home. Walked into my empty house. David's photo sat on the mantel. High school graduation. Cap and gown. That gap-toothed grin grown into a confident smile. His father's eyes. My stubborn chin. I picked up the frame. Held it against my chest. I'm going to bring you home, I whispered to the glass. I promise, sweetheart. I promise. But I didn't know if I could keep that promise. And that uncertainty was the hardest thing of all. The call came at 2 in the morning. 3 weeks after Carmen's arrest. She's ready to talk. Morrison's voice pulled me from shallow sleep. I was already sitting up. Reaching for clothes. When? Now. She asked for you specifically. Says she won't give a statement unless you're present. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I dressed in the dark. Drove through empty Phoenix streets. The city at night is different. Quieter. The violence of the sun gone. Just aftermath. Just scars. I thought about what I'd say to her. What I'd ask. Whether I'd be able to sit in that chair without reaching across the table. I didn't know. Morrison met me at the jail entrance. 4 a.m. Now. The sky's still dark. Her lawyer advised against this. Said she should keep quiet until trial. But she overruled him. Says she can't sleep. Can't eat. Needs to tell you directly. Has she said where David is? Not yet. She says she'll only speak to you. No one else. We walked through security. Down long corridors. Fluorescent lights humming. Everything smelling like disinfectant and hopelessness. The interrogation room was the same one as before. But this time I wasn't behind glass. Carmen sat at the table. Hands cuffed. She looked worse than 3 weeks ago. Thinner. Hollow-eyed. Gray roots showing in her dark hair. When I walked in, she flinched like I'd struck her. Mrs. Carter. Her voice cracked on my name. I sat down across from her. Morrison stood by the door. A camera in the corner recorded everything. I didn't speak. Just looked at her. Let the silence stretch. She started crying immediately. I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Where is my son? I'll tell you everything. I promise. But first I need you to understand. Where is he, Carmen? She put her cuffed hands over her face. Sobbed. When she lowered them, old mascara, days old streaked her cheeks. Superstition Mountains. Near the hieroglyphic trail parking area. There's a ravine off the main path. About 2 miles in. East side. Hidden by mesquite trees. I left him there. The room tilted. Morrison moved forward, but I held up my hand. Kept my eyes on Carmen. Tell me what happened. Every detail. From the beginning. She took a shaking breath. I made bad investments. 2 years ago. Stock tips from a friend who said they were guaranteed. I lost everything. $40,000. Then I took out loans to try to recover it. Lost more. Before I knew it, I owed $60,000 to people who don't take no for an answer. So you started running drugs. They offered. Said it was easy money. Just drive packages from Phoenix to Albuquerque. Once a month. They'd erase my debt and pay me $5,000 per trip. I thought I could do it a few times and get out. How many trips? 8. Over 14 months. After the debt was cleared, I tried to stop. But they said I knew too much. Said if I quit, they'd hurt David. Hurt you. So I kept going. Ice formed in my chest. David found out. 3 weeks ago. He saw a text message on my phone. From my contact. About the next pickup. He went through my laptop that night. Found everything. The secret bank accounts. The burner phone records. The routes. Everything. What did he say? Her face crumpled completely. He cried, Mrs. Carter. He sat at our kitchen table and cried. Asked me how I could do this. Said he'd spent his whole life trying to be honest. Trying to uphold the law. And I'd destroyed everything. What did you say? I begged him. Told him we could run away. Start over somewhere. New names. New life. But he refused. He said. Her voice broke. He said the only way to fix it was to turn ourselves in. Together. Go to the police the next morning and confess everything. I could see it. David. My David. Trying to save her even then. Even after the betrayal. But you didn't want to go to prison. I was terrified. These people. They'd kill me if I talked. Kill both of us. And prison. I couldn't face it. I told him that. But he wouldn't listen. He just kept saying we had to do the right thing. So you killed him? No. She looked up sharply. No. It was an accident. I swear to God it was an accident. Tell me. She wiped her face with her cuffed hands. That night. Tuesday night. We fought for hours. He packed a bag. Said we were leaving first thing in the morning. Driving straight to the police station. He was so calm about it. So sure. Like he'd already accepted it. And you hadn't. I grabbed my purse. Told him I was leaving. He blocked the door. Said he couldn't let me run. That he loved me too much to watch me destroy myself completely. Morrison shifted by the door. Carmen didn't notice. I tried to push past him. He grabbed my arm. We struggled. Not violent. Just. He was holding me back. Trying to stop me. And I shoved him. Hard. To break free. She stopped. Stared at her hands. He fell backward. Lost his balance. Into the coffee table. The corner. He hit his head. There was this sound. This awful crack. And he just collapsed. Stopped moving. The room was completely silent. I checked for a pulse. Nothing. I tried CPR. I called his name. Shook him. But he was gone. Mrs. Carter, I swear I didn't mean for it to happen. I just wanted to get away. I never wanted. Stop. She froze. You didn't call 911. You didn't try to save him. You cleaned the crime scene and you ran. I panicked. You made a choice. My voice was steel. My son was dead on the floor and you chose yourself. You scrubbed his blood out of the carpet. You wrapped him in a scarf I made with my own hands. You put him in your trunk like he was trash. And you dumped him in the mountains. I was terrified. I thought they'd charge me with murder. I thought the cartel would kill me if I went to the police. I didn't know what to do. So you did the most cowardly thing possible. You erased him. And you ran. Carmen was sobbing now. Full, body shaking sobs. I know. I know. I hate myself. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I see his face every time I close my eyes. Every night. Every nightmare. He's just looking at me. Not angry. Just Sad. Good. The word came out cold. Final. I stood up. I want the exact location. Every landmark. Every detail. And then I want you to live with what you did for the rest of your miserable life. They found David 2 days later. Saturday morning. Early. Morrison called me before dawn. We have him, Helen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't go to the recovery site. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Jack was buried. Sat on the grass beside his headstone. Gray granite. Simple inscription: Jack Carter. Husband. Father. Friend. They found our boy, I said to the stone. He tried to do the right thing. Just like you taught him. Just like he always did. The medical examiner confirmed it later. Blunt force trauma to the occipital region. Death would have been instantaneous. One small mercy. The only mercy in this entire nightmare. The trial took 4 months. Carmen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, drug trafficking, and tampering with evidence. Her defense lawyer argued for leniency. Called it a tragic accident. Said she'd panicked. Made terrible choices but never intended to kill anyone. The prosecutor showed the jury photos. The bleach bottles. The scrubbed floors. The blood-stained trunk. The abandoned vehicle. The ravine where my son had been left for 3 weeks. Decomposing. Alone. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was in February, almost a year after David disappeared. I sat in the front row of the courtroom. Carmen was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Cuffs and leg shackles. She looked older. Gray hair. Deep lines around her mouth and eyes. The judge read the sentence. 25 years to life. Eligible for parole in 2050. She'd be in her 50s. If she lived that long. Carmen showed no emotion. Just stared straight ahead. But as the bailiff led her away, she turned. Looked directly at me. "Mom," she said. Voice breaking. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Didn't move. Just watched them take her through the door. Out of the courtroom. Out of my life. Morrison walked me to my car afterward. "You okay?" "No. But I will be." "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet." We buried David on a Saturday in late February. Overcast sky. Cool for Phoenix. Wind cutting through the cemetery. The funeral was small. His law school friends. Colleagues from Harding and Associates. Neighbors. Priya brought white roses. Morrison and several officers came in uniform. I stood beside the casket. Mahogany with brass handles. I'd chosen it myself. Picked it out alone in a funeral home while soft music played and a sympathetic director hovered nearby. The priest, young, earnest, never met David, said words about peace and rest and God's mysterious plan. I didn't listen. Just looked at the polished wood and thought about my son inside. Dark suit. Tie I'd bought him for his birthday. Hair combed. Looking like he was sleeping. They lowered him into the ground next to Jack. 2 graves. 2 headstones. 2 men I'd loved more than anything. People came by afterward. Touched my shoulder. Said they were sorry. That David was a good man. That he'd be missed. I nodded. Said thank you. Played the part. When everyone left, I stayed. Sat in a folding chair by the fresh dirt. The cemetery workers had gone. Just me and the graves and the wind moving through the trees. I found her, I said to the ground. She'll pay. Not enough. Never enough. But something. The wind picked up. Scattered dead leaves across the grass. You tried to save her, sweetheart. That's who you were. Always trying to help people. Fix things. Even when it cost you. My throat closed. I pressed my hand against the dirt. I'm so proud of you. And I miss you every single day. I sat there until the sun went down. Until the cold seeped into my bones. Until I had no more tears left. Then I drove home. To my empty house. To my silent kitchen. To my life without purpose. But something was starting to form in my mind. A promise. A plan. Because David's death couldn't be for nothing. And I wasn't done yet. The first month after the funeral, I barely left my house. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit at the kitchen table. The same table where David used to spread out his homework. Where we'd eaten breakfast together 1,000 times. Where he'd asked me that question about turning in someone you love. If only I'd pushed harder then. Asked more questions. Understood what he was really asking. But I didn't. And now he was gone. Morrison called every few days. Checking on me. Making sure I was eating. Getting out of bed. Functioning. I appreciated it. But I couldn't give him what he wanted. I couldn't tell him I was healing. Because I wasn't. Spring came to Phoenix. Wildflowers bloomed in the desert. Yellow and purple and orange spreading across the hills. Life continuing. The world turning. Like nothing had changed. Like my entire universe hadn't collapsed. I started going through David's things. His childhood bedroom was mostly the way he'd left it when he moved out. Baseball trophies on shelves. High school yearbooks. A framed photo of him and Jack at a Diamondbacks game. Both grinning. Sunburned. Happy. Before cancer. Before everything. I found his law school notebooks. Margin notes in his careful, precise handwriting. Questions about ethics and justice and morality. He'd always cared about those things. Even as a child, I remembered him at 8 years old. Crying after school because his teacher had punished the whole class for one student's misbehavior. It's not fair, Mom. Why should everyone get in trouble for something one kid did? Sometimes that's just how it works, sweetheart. Then it's wrong. The system is wrong. He'd never lost that. That certainty about fairness. That conviction that right mattered. That justice was worth fighting for. It got him killed. 3 months after the funeral, I was watching the local news. Evening broadcast. A segment about another mother. Younger than me. Maybe early 40s. Her son had overdosed on fentanyl-laced pills. 17 years old. Found in his bedroom. Gone before the ambulance arrived. She stood at a podium. Press conference. Crying. Talking about warning signs she'd missed. How she thought he was just moody. Typical teenager. How she'd assumed he was safe because he was a good kid. Honor student. Athletes. Volunteers. She kept saying, I should have known. Why didn't I see it? How did I miss this? I watched her face. Saw the devastation. The guilt. The endless questions. Could I have stopped this? Was there a moment when everything could have been different? The same questions I asked myself every night. I turned off the TV. Sat in silence. And I thought about David's last question. About turning in someone you love. I'd told him love doesn't mean protecting people from consequences. Sometimes it means making sure they face them. That's how people learn. That's how they grow. He'd tried to do exactly that. Tried to save Carmen by forcing her to do the right thing. And it cost him everything. But he'd been right. About ethics. About justice. About courage. And maybe his death could still mean something. Morrison stopped by that afternoon. Unannounced. I made coffee. We sat on the back patio in the shade. How are you doing, Helen? I'm here. That's about all I can say. He nodded. Understood that was the best answer I had. I wanted to run something by you, he said. The department's been getting requests from schools, community centers, youth organizations. They want speakers for drug awareness programs. Real stories, not just statistics and scare tactics. People who've lived through it. Okay, I thought maybe you'd consider it. You have the experience. You have a story that matters. And Helen, he looked at me directly. You need something. Some purpose. Some reason to get out of this house. I stared at my coffee mug. I wouldn't know what to say. Yes, you would. You'd tell them about David. About Carmen. About how drug crime doesn't just destroy users. It destroys families. It destroys good people who get caught up in impossible situations. I don't think I can stand up there and talk about it. You don't have to decide today. Just think about it. He left. I sat there in the desert heat. Thinking. About that young mother on the news. About David. About all the families destroyed by drugs and debt and desperation. I called Morrison 2 weeks later. Said yes. The first talk was at a high school in Tempe. Large auditorium. Rows of teenagers with skeptical faces and crossed arms. They'd heard this before. Some assembly about drugs. Boring. Predictable. I walked to the podium. Looked out at them. My name is Helen Carter. 11 months ago, my son was murdered. He was 34 years old. A lawyer. A good man. He never used drugs. Never sold drugs. But drugs killed him anyway. The room went completely quiet. I told them about Carmen. About investment losses and crushing debt. About how she thought she could control it. Make a few drug runs. Get out clean. How it never works that way. I told them about David. About his choice to do the right thing even though he knew it might cost him his relationship. Maybe his marriage. How courage sometimes means telling the truth when everything in you wants to stay quiet. And I told them about our last conversation. His question about turning in someone you love. My answer about love and consequences. Real love means holding people accountable, I said. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because love that protects people from consequences isn't love at all. It's enabling. And enabling kills. When I finished, a girl in the third row raised her hand. Tentative. Did you forgive her? The woman who killed your son? I thought about it. Really considered the question. No, I said honestly. I haven't forgiven her. I don't know if I ever will. But I'm trying to understand how fear makes people do terrible things. How one bad choice leads to another. How quickly you can lose yourself. Another hand. A boy near the back. Do you think your son would have forgiven her? That one hurt. I took a breath before answering. I think my son would have wanted her to face justice. To take responsibility. But I also think he'd want something good to come from his death. He'd want other people to learn from it. Make different choices. Be braver than she was. I did more talks. Schools, churches, community centers, parent support groups. After each one, people approached me, shared their own stories, their own fears and losses. A mother whose daughter was in rehab for the third time. A father whose son was in prison for dealing. A grandmother raising her grandchildren because their parents were addicts. So many people carrying so much pain. I started a fund, named it David's Light. Small at first. Just donations collected at speaking events. But it grew. Enough to help families afford treatment, legal representation, counseling services. Enough to make a real difference. One afternoon, 6 months after the first talk, I received an email from Priya, David's former assistant. She'd attached a photo. It showed a brass plaque mounted in the lobby of Harding and Associates. In memory of David Carter. Attorney, advocate, man of integrity. The right thing is rarely the easy thing. I printed it out, put it on my refrigerator, right next to an old photo of David at age 6. Gap-toothed grin, fistful of dandelions. It's been 2 years now. Carmen is in Perryville Women's Prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 23 years. She writes me letters sometimes. They arrive in standard prison envelopes. I don't open them. Not yet. I keep them in a box in my closet. Maybe someday I'll be ready. Maybe not. David's grave is next to Jack's in Greenwood Cemetery. I visit every Sunday morning. Bring fresh flowers. Usually white roses. Priya told me those were his favorite. I sit on the grass between the 2 headstones and tell them about my week. About the talks I've given. The families I've met. The lives that might be changing. I tell them about the 17-year-old girl who approached me after a presentation. Said she'd been planning to try pills at a party that weekend. But after hearing my story, she changed her mind. Texted me a month later to say she was glad she had. You saved her, I say to David's headstone. Through me, through this, you're still saving people. The wind moves through the cemetery. Rustles the flowers in their vases. I like to think it's him. Listening. Proud of what his death has become. I don't have answers. I don't have closure. Those are words people use when they want grief to be neat. Packaged. Finished. But grief isn't neat. It's messy and ongoing. It hits you in random moments. At the grocery store when you see his favorite cereal. At a restaurant when someone orders what he always ordered. On the highway passing the exit to his old house. What I have instead is purpose. I have a choice I make every single morning. To get up. To keep breathing. To turn my pain into something that might prevent someone else's pain. I have David's voice in my head. Still asking questions about right and wrong. And I have my own voice answering the right thing is to keep living. Keep fighting. Keep telling the truth. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. If you're listening to this, I want you to know something important. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself you're overreacting. Don't stay silent to keep the peace or avoid conflict. Ask the hard questions. Have the difficult conversations. Love people enough to hold them accountable. To tell them the truth even when the truth is painful. And if you've lost someone, if you're carrying grief that feels impossible to bear, know that you're not alone. The pain doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It becomes something you can carry. Something you can even use to help others carry theirs. My son tried to do the right thing. It cost him his life. But his choice, his courage, that's the real legacy. That's what continues. And I'll spend the rest of my days making sure his death matters. Thank you for listening to my story. For letting me share David's story with you. I hope it helps someone. I hope it makes you think. Makes you brave. Makes you ask the questions that need asking. If this story touched you in any way, please consider subscribing to the Grandparents' Memories and Life channel. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. These stories need to be told. These lessons need to be shared. And your support helps us reach more people who need to hear them. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember, the right thing is rarely the easy thing. But it's always worth doing. Always.